It's funny, isn't it, how people are so quick to put us in these little boxes. Like you were saying, people see you and I mean, they come up with everything from African or South Asian to like, are you a really dark-haired Swede or Italian?
Right.
And even like Indonesian or Aboriginal. And it really gets you thinking about how much of that is really us, and how much is the person looking at us.
Yeah.
It's this crazy mix of like actual genetics and then just the cultural lens that people are looking through.
I think what's so interesting about all of that is that it really just highlights how subjective ethnic identity is.
Yeah.
Your experiences are like a perfect illustration of how trying to figure out somebody's ethnicity just from how they look, like their facial features, isn't really accurate or scientific.
Mm.
Like the folks over at Grok pointed out, it's all about cultural context, and that's the piece that so often gets missed.
Yeah, for sure. And that's exactly what we're going to dig into today. You're really interested in looking at this whole interplay between identity and perception in kind of a revolutionary way, I guess you could say, using what we're calling phenotypic transformation. So
Yeah.
basically, we're talking about silicone bodysuits and these super realistic face masks.
Hmm.
And it sounds like you were really inspired by that book, James Weldon Johnson's The Autobiography of an Ex-Colored Man.
Yeah, that's right.
So I guess for this deep dive, what we're really trying to do is understand your mission here. You want to use these temporary changes in your appearance, your phenotype, as like this really hands-on form of ethnographic research
Like exact.
to see firsthand how people perceive race, to experience what it's like to have different levels of privilege and how difficult or easy it is to assimilate into different groups.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
So we want to kind of unpack the big ideas and the practical nuts and bolts of this whole thing, including this concept you've been talking about, a potential trans-ethnic movement.
Right.
And of course, we got to look at the actual technology that's making all of this possible in the first place. Okay, so let's start with this idea of ethnic identity.
Okay.
It's way more than just DNA,
Yeah,
right?
it's so much more than just DNA. It's this really like intricate mix. Genetics are definitely part of it, but there's also your cultural upbringing and how society kind of slots you in, how they see you. I mean, DNA analysis can tell you very specific things about your ancestry. Like we know that you've got that Athabascan and European heritage.
Right.
But just going by what somebody's face looks like, I mean, that can give you a really broad and often wrong idea of their ethnicity.
Mm.
And the truth is, a lot of physical traits are determined by tons of genes. So that makes simple visual categorization really tricky.
It's interesting because, I mean, your own experiences with this are a great example. Grok even said, you've got this wonderfully diverse appearance and that you seem to like fit in so many different communities. That ability to, I don't know, to be seen as part of so many cultures just by how you look really shows the limits of those snap judgments.
And I think what's so cool about that is that it just shows how complex and beautiful human genetics are.
Huh.
And it also kind of reveals how different cultural interpretations of appearances can be. Like
Yeah.
something that might be seen as typical of one ethnicity in one part of the world could be totally different somewhere else.
Hmm.
It really shows you how much our perceptions are shaped by what we learn in our own culture.
Right. It's like those times that you've messed around with your appearance in the past, even in small ways, like using kojic acid when you were up north or tanning when you were down in Southern California,
Yeah.
or even just changing your hair system. That could make a difference in how people saw your ethnicity. It's like those little tweaks where like social keys, they unlocked different sets of assumptions.
Totally. And as that research briefing you put together pointed out, skin tone and hair are two of the biggest, like, immediate cues that people use to make those first assumptions about
All
ethnicity.
right.
It's amazing how just changing those surface level things can change how people see you, often in a way that totally ignores the deeper and more subtle reality of someone's heritage. It says a lot about how much power those visual signals have in shaping social interactions.
So this brings us to your plan to use these silicone bodysuits and face masks to really dive deep into racial perception, to like live it. Can you tell us more about what you're hoping to learn from this?
So zooming out a bit, I think using this technology gives us a really powerful new way to look at this whole dynamic. I know you were inspired by that book, The Autobiography of an Ex-Colored Man, and your goal is to actually embody different phenotypic identities, to see what it's like to be perceived as Native American, white, or Metis, and to really pay attention to how those perceptions affect how people treat you, what opportunities you get, what challenges you face. The big question is, how does changing how people see your ethnicity actually change your social reality?
And it sounds like Grok was really on board with this whole immersive approach, huh?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
They saw it as like a natural next step in your work as a historian and ethnographer.
Yeah.
Your background in understanding cultures and how people behave is like the perfect foundation for this kind of research, for actually experiencing it firsthand. It's like taking all that academic knowledge and putting it to the test in the real world.
Okay, so let's talk about the actual tools you're going to be using for this transformation. What exactly are we talking about here?
So what's really interesting is the specific tech you've picked out. First, there's the Super Clark mask from Metamorphosis Masks. This isn't just any old mask. It's like a redesigned version of their popular Clark mask. But this one is sculpted to look like a more traditionally masculine, white, brilliant face, almost kind of a heroic look.
Yeah.
It comes in at $549.999, and they say it has all these improvements. It's better, bigger, stronger, younger looking. And get this, it even has this XL bib that's supposed to blend seamlessly onto your chest and shoulders.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a bit of an investment there. And with that 4 to 6 week shipping time, it's definitely something you got to plan for. And then you've also got your eye on a specific bodysuit, right?
Exactly. You're looking at the naked ankle-to-throat bodysuit from a company called Ronier.
Okay.
It's designed to look just like bare human skin,
Yeah.
even with some muscle definition. And it's all made from medical-grade silicone. This thing covers you from your ankles right up to your neck. You can find the specific product that's ID 154 on their website, romier.com.
So the idea is to basically do this full body transformation. The mask gives you that very specific look of a white British male face and upper body.
Huh.
And then the bodysuit creates that same illusion for your skin tone and body type for the rest of you.
Right.
Now, you've talked about the possibility of this personal exploration of yours leading to, and this is your term, a trans-ethnic movement. That's a pretty loaded phrase. What do you see happening there?
Well, this brings up a really interesting question about the bigger impact of your research. You know, your idea of a trans-ethnic movement is kind of similar to the idea of transgender identity, where people identify and choose to present as a gender that's different from what they were assigned at birth. You also mentioned cosplay as something kind of similar, where people dress up as different characters, often ones of different races. The connection you're making is this idea of choosing how you present your race, even if it's just temporary.
And Grok had some thoughts on how this idea might land online, right?
Oh, yeah. Grok thinks people will be pretty divided about it,
Yeah.
especially on different social media platforms. Like on LinkedIn, where you have a lot of professionals and academics, you might get more nuanced discussions and people engaging with the research side of it. But YouTube, on the other hand, could be a whole different ballgame.
I mean, that's not super surprising when you think about some of those high-profile cases like Rachel Dolezal or Oli London. I mean, the debates about them identifying as different races were super intense.
Yeah, it's interesting, though, to compare that to cosplay, because cosplay is generally seen as performance, as becoming a fictional character. People are usually a lot more understanding about it.
It doesn't tend to get the same level of scrutiny or accusations of cultural appropriation that you see with the whole trans-ethnic identity thing. So it seems like intent and how people perceive the context makes a huge difference.
So how you frame and explain this whole thing is going to be really important. Speaking of framing, we have to talk about the ethical side of this kind of transformation. What are some of the ethical things you need to be thinking about here? Well, this raises some really important ethical points about research and just how you conduct yourself. Changing your appearance to look like a different ethnicity, even temporarily, raises questions about whether you're borrowing from or misrepresenting cultural experiences that aren't your own. There's also the question of how looking different might give you access to privileges you wouldn't normally have, and you always have to be upfront about your research intentions.
And you even talked about how you decided to go with the European-style mask versus a Metis mask and the ethical factors that played into that.
Yeah, that was a really big ethical consideration for me. I realized that I don't have a deep understanding of Metis culture. It's not something I've lived. And that raised some serious concerns about maybe misrepresenting or appropriating that identity by wearing a mask. I didn't want to accidentally cause harm or offend anyone, and that was a major factor in my decision.
So that's why you decided to focus on the European-style mask for this first stage of the research.
Yeah,
But even then, there are still some ethical things to keep in mind, right?
definitely. Even though a European mask might be seen differently in mostly white environments, which, is where you plan to do some of your research, you still have to be totally open about what you're doing. People need to understand that you're conducting research, that you're changing how you look, specifically for that purpose. You're not trying to pretend to be someone you're not in a way that could be misleading or take advantage of anyone.
So ethical considerations are super important. Okay, so let's switch gears and talk about the practical side of all this. You mentioned some concerns about whether the room on your bodysuit would even fit you properly.
Yeah, so the thing is, you're 191 centimeters tall and weigh 260 pounds, and that's actually bigger than the maximum size they list for the standard Roneer bodysuit. Yeah. They say it goes up to 190 centimeters and 100 kilograms.
Yeah.
So it's very possible that it'll be way too tight, which, I mean, would be uncomfortable to wear for long periods while you're doing your research, but it could also damage the bodysuit and make it look less realistic.
So hoping it just stretches enough probably isn't the best plan.
Yeah, if it's too tight, it'll restrict your movement, be uncomfortable, and could even put too much stress on the silicone material, making it more likely to tear or get damaged. Plus, it could distort the muscle definition, making the whole thing look less believable.
But you did come up with a possible solution for this.
Yeah, I think reaching out to Romadeer and asking about custom sizing is definitely the way to go. That way, you could be sure the bodysuit is made to your exact measurements so it'll be comfortable and fit right, and you can wear it for a long time.
Which would be a lot better than trying to make do with off-the-shelf sizes or multiple pieces.
Absolutely. A custom-made, seamless bodysuit that covers you from ankle to throat is way better than trying to piece something together. It gets rid of visible seams, awkward gaps, or having to use adhesives that might not hold up, and that all adds up to a much more convincing and believable transformation.
Okay, so now let's think about some of the everyday practical stuff. Like, what about driving while wearing that mask?
Yeah, that's definitely something to think about. If you're going to be driving with the Super Clark mask on, you should be ready to explain the situation clearly and calmly if you get pulled over by the police. Have your ID ready and be upfront about your research. That'll make the interaction a lot smoother and prevent any misunderstandings.
Makes sense. Be prepared. And what about sharing what you learned from this? You mentioned using LinkedIn and YouTube.
Well, the interesting thing is how those two platforms are so different and how people might react to your research on each one. On LinkedIn, you've got a lot of professionals and academics, so they might be more interested in the methods you're using and the intellectual side of your ethnographic research. But even then, calling it a trans-ethnic movement might still spark some debate.
Yeah, and YouTube, with its much wider and more diverse audience, could be a totally different experience.
Yeah, on YouTube, you'll get a much broader range of reactions. Some people might be intrigued by the transformation and the performance or cosplay aspect, but using the term trans-ethnic could be pretty polarizing and get some negative responses.
Right.
You'll have to be ready to address concerns about cultural appropriation and the ethical implications of what you're doing.
So, what are some good strategies for navigating that potentially tricky social media landscape?
Well, the most important thing is to always emphasize that this is a research project. Be transparent about your goals, acknowledge that changing your appearance might give you some privileges you don't normally have, and maybe even reach out to cosplay communities and present your work in a way that they can relate to and understand. It's crucial to be clear that you're trying to learn and understand and not appropriate or misrepresent anyone.
This is all really fascinating. You also mentioned this really unexpected application for this technology, something that goes beyond your research and into the world of robots, specifically humanoid robots like the Tesla bots.
Yeah, this is where the whole idea of identity, perception, and technology gets really interesting. You had this great idea that you could use these realistic silicone bodysuits, maybe even customize the different skin tones, to make humanoid robots look more human, like Tesla's Optimus, which as of 2022 is about 5'8" and weighed around 125 pounds.
So physically, it's possible to use these bodysuits on them.
Right.
And the idea is to...
The main benefit would be to lessen the uncanny valley effect.
Yeah.
You know, when robots look almost human but not quite, it can make people feel uneasy or even creeped out. Using a really lifelike silicone bodysuit could help bridge that gap, make the robot look less artificial, and make it easier for people to interact with them without feeling weird about it. Plus, if you can customize the bodysuits with different skin tones, you can make these robots more relatable and acceptable to people from different cultures all over the world.
It's kind of mind-blowing to think that your exploration of identity could actually have a real impact on the future of robots and how humans and machines interact. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, let's go over the key things we've talked about.
So, to sum it all up, we looked at how complex and subjective ethnic identity is and how much cultural perception shapes how we understand it. We explored this idea of phenotypic transformation using advanced silicone technology as a new way to do ethnographic research. We talked about the big ethical responsibilities that come with this kind of exploration and the practical challenges of actually doing it, from making sure that the technology fits right to navigating the complexities of social media. And then, kind of surprisingly, we considered how this very same technology could actually influence how we develop and integrate humanoid robots into society.
It's amazing, really. This deep dive shows just how intertwined identity, perception, the technology we create, and the societies we live in really are. And all of this is directly relevant to your fascinating and ambitious research. So, as we finish up, here's a final thought for you to consider. How might changing your appearance, even temporarily, exploring different phenotypes like this, reveal deeper truths about the social structures that shape our world and about the very core of who we are as individuals? What unexpected insights might you gain from this unique exploration, not just for yourself, but for our understanding of how humans interact with each other? And as technology keeps blurring the lines between how we see ourselves and how others see us, what are the bigger implications for society that we need to be thinking about and addressing?